Welcome to Conversation with Wellifehub Incorporated. This is a new season. We have taken a season break intentionally because we wanted to just adjust ourselves and maybe bring a lot of freshness. As you can see, these are all faces that you're seeing, but I think they are coming in very fresh in this season,
Oh,
Sharon.
no, definitely fresh and brighter.
much brighter.
Yeah.
Sharon has introduced herself a couple of times. You have seen her throughout the years that we have had this channel from 2020 ongoing. I think she was one of the first people outside of myself in this channel, and this is what, the fifth year now? Or fourth year? Fourth year. No, it's fifth. 2020, 21, 22, 23, 24.
Yeah,
is it four? Okay. All right. It feels like 5 years. Why?
I don't know. Maybe 5 is associated with milestone, but yeah.
I guess.
Yes.
The
fourth year.
Yeah, sure. But I think then 4 can also be a good milestone.
It is.
And maybe even in what we are going to be talking about, sometimes it goes in 4s as well.
Yeah.
So Sharon is coming today as, I think the label that you have seen a couple of times was social worker, but now she's coming as an intern psychologist.
Yes.
Not to say that she's still doing her internship. You are done with your internship.
Yes,
You're just waiting to graduate and to write your board exam, and then you will be an independent practitioner.
Yes, which is very exciting and definitely something I've been looking forward to.
Yes.
Yeah. Beautiful transition.
Sure.
Yeah.
I always say when people ask me about my career path that psychology chose me, and we're not necessarily going to be speaking specifically about psychology, but a lot of people come to crossroads, and I think nowadays it is normalized to also have dual careers, to have transition in careers. I will be speaking, I think, next month to an industrial psychologist around that, and remaining resilient in those changes, especially the changing dynamics of careers. There are careers that are becoming absolute because of technology. There are careers that are becoming outdated, and not necessarily also because of technology, but because of how the world works and how the world have evolved and how us as human beings have evolved. And I wonder, what are your takes on that in terms of how things have evolved, even maybe for yourself?
Yeah, no, definitely. Because if you think about the subject of career choice, that's a lifelong process.
Sure.
Because growing up, you're asked, what do you want to be when you grow up? And we tend to think of it as a fixed idea that I will be this and that is that. But if you think about human beings, we're so complex, we're so dynamic, in our abilities, in our interests, even in our experiences that we encounter along the journey of life. So there can't just be one career that it's this or nothing else that you would enjoy and continue to flourish in throughout your life. So I definitely do share similar sentiments that transitioning in between different things is great. It doesn't have to be a whole new industry or completely different out of your original skill set, so to say, that, or your initial choice of career, but maybe an expansion or even developing a new thing altogether. Like you're saying, with other careers becoming absolute because of technology. And usually when a person says that, I think of photographers. Growing up in the township, on Saturday afternoon, you would see guys walking around with their cameras, taking pictures, and then they come 3 weeks later with the printed out for 10 rands or whatever it is. But who does that now? Because we all have a smartphone that can do that. So it means that space had to change in how business is done. So definitely we are evolving in so many ways. Yeah.
How would you say you have evolved to share that? And I will come back to the gap year. Maybe I'm having this conversation a little bit backwards, but how have you evolved? If you were to give us a real example using yourself as a case study.
Okay, great. So for me, leaving high school, well, initially, because also, sometimes you want to choose a career according to subject choices that you have. And I remember having the commerce stream, your accounting, economics. Then I thought, okay, it means then I'll go into BCom. I think maybe also BCom was also quite a popular choice that people were making at that time. And I mean, I ended up in social work. It was not I ended up in social work by chance. I mean, there was always an interest. I mean, even considering my personality, my interests, it has always come across as something that would have been an option for me. And I always say, I thank God that I found myself in it. And that was my first qualification in social work. But being in social work and studying, you get to have other modules like psychology, and you recognize that, okay, I don't have to just wear one cap and limit myself to this. There's different ways in which I can expand, in which I can grow. And I remember, because you mentioned that you will explore more about the social work, the gap year later. I remember, towards the end of my studies as a social work, I was so overwhelmed because you have spent 4 years of studying and practicals, and now it's like, okay, what's next? Do I go now into government or into a children's home or an NGO, or where do I find myself within the social work space, which can all be very overwhelming. And I mean, also socioeconomically, ideally, we all want to leave varsity and go into a job and start building security, accumulating assets or gaining independence. But for me, I felt that I needed time to think, out of the pressure of studying, out of this pressure of what's next, to just find myself again, my youthfulness. Because your youthful years are the best years of your life. Because I was 22 when I completed studying. So imagine already being fixed to the idea of a permanent job, a permanent career. Is that really it? So yeah, I think that opened a door for me to start exploring and looking into other things that I could do before making a decision on where do I fix myself, like where do I become stationed. Yeah.
And you're talking about finding your youth and finding yourself, and I would say it's unfortunate, although it's not regarded that way. But I would say it's unfortunate for somebody to start school at 2, which is your preschool years, your kindergarten years, grade RRR, I think at 3 or 4, your grade R, continuing, and then you go into school, your preparatory years, you go into high school, you're still in that formal education system, you go into your tertiary, still in that formal, and then you go into work. So the reason why I say it's quite unfortunate is, where does a person then find themselves if that is the linear road that they have taken in life? And I know I am controversial in saying this because it is a very attractive thing to do, to say, oh, I have passed all the years, I've done this at record time, I graduated at record time, and it's a something honorable to put on, and then you go into the world of work and you are again excelling and maybe even getting into your C-suite by your 30s. And I think we see this as a very much of this person has achieved. And I'm gonna repeat, I find it unfortunate. There isn't being exactly what I was saying, and I think I'm going to do a couple of series on the gap year. Because whenever I encourage parents, when we have done a career assessment and I say, out of everything that I've talked about, can your child please take a gap year? And they say, but that will be a waste of time. It will be a waste of money. And I say, actually, the opposite is true. Because if you then study all throughout, you don't have self-knowledge, the likelihood of changing numerous times courses to start with, and careers, which is not a bad thing, as you and I are talking about it. I'm a huge advocate of the gap year.
No, definitely.
Mine lasted 4.5 years. I know yours lasted for a year.
Yeah.
But mine lasted for 4.5 years, and I've got a story to tell about that.
Yeah.
But we can talk more about that. But tell me, what is this big deal that I'm making about the gap year?
Yeah, no, I mean, like you're saying, that it's so unfortunate that we are supposed to succumb to this formal structure of life, of school, varsity, work. It's suffocating. And for me, I definitely would say I benefited so much from a gap year, because first of all, it teaches you things outside of your normal.
No, maybe just even something, and I'm hoping this colleague will not take an offense. We were talking about something about a couple of months ago.
Okay.
I was saying to this colleague, if it was me, I will have slept at this place.
Oh yes.
And that colleague could not even think.
Yeah.
And that's because of the experience that you and I had as missionaries.
Yes, of course.
Both as part-time missionaries, because we were part-time missionaries doing outreach, during school holidays, and as full-time missionaries. And that's how my gap year looked like. And I think more or less similar as well. But the skills of surviving, of knowing that when you go to a place, as long as it's not star rated, you take a sleeping bag and a markup plan with you, or a sanitizer or something to spray for bed bugs.
Yes.
As long as the place is not star rated, 3 and up.
With just 2 sets of changing clothes.
At least.
While you're there for an entire week or two.
Sure.
So definitely, I mean, things like a gap year and getting yourself into a program or something that is out of the formal structure of life, it contributes to your growth so much, because it also shows you your limits and shows you how far you're willing to go. I mean, I said, for example, you mentioned now that we've both done part-time and full-time missionary work. For me, my gap year, that's what I did. And
I mean, you were in Egypt, in Lebanon.
Exactly.
Nobody out of their minds will say, I'm going to Lebanon right now.
Bravely, unprovoked,
so, exactly,
Yes. And I think that is what I appreciated a lot about it, that I did it in different contexts to what I had been exposed to. I mean, my context is South Africa, it's community, it's this that you are raised in. But with that came the courage to be like, no, I want to do this. So I did my discipleship training, which is a program that gets you into missions in Switzerland, which is in Europe, and it's a completely different way of life to what we are exposed to in South Africa. You even learn different structures of doing things. I was surprised that the kids don't wear school uniform, and that people don't work Monday to Friday.
It's a public school.
And it's a public school, and it's great,
And with them not working Monday to Friday, that you've got 30% of work, 50% of work, 60% of work, 75%, and then 100% of work,
Exactly. And even with all of that, you can still afford cost of living. You can have time with your family, because I mean, in South Africa, one of the things we speak about a lot is the work-life balance or work-life integration. There you experience the integration firsthand, because people literally come home in the afternoon to have lunch, then go back. Even the kids come back home earlier than what we do. Some schools don't even have homework, because that also takes away from the family time, because now you've knocked off at 4, you get home at 5, and then you're doing homework for another hour. So meaning school is also taken
3 hours, depending on how many kids you have.
Exactly, and 4. The age.
Sure.
So it's almost like your life is centered around those formal routines. So for me, that kind of exposure opened up my mind, and that was part of my evolving to recognize that, okay, things, I mean, of course, I understand the context, that the context is different.
The first world
versus developing, but then, I mean,
versus
it can
the third world, where I cried at one outreach where we were in Malawi. And
people struggle for basic needs like food, So even like, for example, being exposed to that as well, you see the harsh realities, not a news article or these media exaggerated pictures, but you get to live in it, and it gives you so much perspective, and it contributes to your growth, that I don't have to settle for less. I can also set up myself, have career aspirations that can set me up So also have time freedom. Remember, they speak of financial freedom, social freedom, time freedom. You know, because a lot of the time we chase the financial freedom, but you don't have the social freedom where you can't speak your language, where you can't experience your indigenous food, where you can't have the time to spend with your family or go on vacation. So being in a space like that opened up my mind and challenged me to think like that, you know, to see that, okay, there's more to life than just waking up, going to school, then later on going to work, and that is it.
And
you know?
Definitely because of that is why I'm such an advocate of, I mean, you know, I talk a lot about time freedom and what I've created around me, but of social freedom.
Exactly.
Because, and I always say to my kids, you know how I'm very strict on Venek and all of that, to say you will not hear a German person speaking Sesotho, or you will not hear a French person you know, Sepedi, you know, and because that is social freedom. And until you are exposed to that, to see how other people embrace themselves and love themselves and regard, I mean, there is a WhatsApp group that I was part of, and I had to exit turmeric products and Daha products. And I was very much interested because I'm interested in that line in terms of expansion. And in the, turmeric, I pronounced it wrong. And in the turmeric product and the Daha product, I'm excited to say, you know, I'll be a redistributor and label and all of that. Comes skin lightening products. I wrote an essay. Why? Because of social freedom. I said we cannot be in 2024 and still acknowledge that we have to have, well, not to have, but advertising skin lightening. What does it say? What does it say about yourself? But that comes from social freedom. And if you don't know that another person wants to sunbathe to 10, you will not know that your melanin is actually a gift.
It's a blessing, exactly. Because I think also now when you mentioned that aspect, another thing I benefited from my gap year was self-love. Because I was in a Western context where people are very clear about boundaries. People don't overburden themselves with responsibilities because what will people think, you know? And I learned that was quite healthy because I could now offload, you know, it's not necessary to be at everything, you know, that you do. You can say, no, I can't meet up with you today because I'm a bit tired, you know, it's been a hectic week. You don't even have to over-explain yourself, you know?
And no, it's enough.
No, it's enough. And even learning, like what you're saying, the value of the social freedom of loving the self as self is, you know, where you come across a French person who doesn't feel like they need to twang to be considered intelligent, you know? And I mean, obviously with those aspects, they emanate from some parts of our history, of course. But, you know, it taught me that how my English it's not my measure of intelligence.
You can break it. You can break it.
I can break it and
we'll meet somewhere.
We'll meet somewhere as long as, you know, I can communicate, because that is what it is. It's a means of communication. So I am really grateful for that part of my life, because even coming back into, I will call it mainstream life, you know, now you have learned new social skills, you have developed personally, you have a better sense of who you are, and it also removes pressure, because sometimes we put ourselves on this pressure that life is on a time frame. That's why parents will do what you say they do in terms of saying it's a wasted year. But for
this person needs to work.
This person needs to work.
Because they need to earn, they need to support me, they need to support the family.
I mean, imagine already you're going to pay bond for 20 years. So now, if you're going to start it at 23, it means that you never had a time when you don't have debit order, you know?
Oh, debit order.
Imagine like...
By the way, I did not have debit orders until I was at least well into my 27, 28.
Yeah.
When you talk about debit order,
exactly.
I think I was 27, 28, and that was only because I needed to build a credit profile.
Yeah.
I think you remember the conversation that I had with you. So I wanted something, and then they said, well, you don't have a credit profile, and I took out a cell phone contract so that I can, but I'm sure many of my peers already had your clothing accounts.
Vehicle. I mean, I myself, because I finished studying quite early, and I mean, my gap year was only a year. by the time I came back, and then I started working the next year, because I was also on a bursary and I had to work back the time. And within 2 years of working, I was already burdened into a bond, a vehicle, of course, your cell phone contracts, and insurance, food, day-to-day expenses. And on the outside world, it's like you are high functioning. That's success, but was it really success? It wasn't. It was a burden, it was a burden in the sense that now I can't sleep without thinking, okay, month end is coming. It's so anxiety provoking, because also if you consider your developmental phase at the age of 23, 24, the thing that consumes your time shouldn't be managing finances and all of that. Yes, you should to a certain extent, but not in a burdensome way, And
so it should be more of maybe financial literacy,
yes,
financial intelligence, managing your finances, but not as the obligation. I think that's what you're talking about. So all right, month end, I need to balance this, but I have travel money, enough to travel with my friends or to take myself out, to spoil a friend, a family member, by choice.
By choice, also not by obligation. Yes. So for me, even being stuck in there, I call it being stuck because I did at some point feel stuck, but also then another opportunity to further my skills, to further my training. That's when I decided to go into masters, not to run away from my life as a social worker or as an employee, but to experience growth and development, because now I was feeling what I'm becoming stagnant, So that's when I pursued masters, and it was great because it's another level of learning. You also come across like-minded people who sometimes you think are smarter, and then it gives a little bit of an imposter syndrome, but you also learn to not have that, because you build your own confidence and security. And it's been great really to go back to being a student and to explore a new career path, to see your own development and to also reflect on lessons learned, because what I always appreciate about growing and life experiences is that they come with lessons. Now I know if I'm going to be in a space to earn again, I don't have to commit to this and this and this and this, and I don't have to just bind myself like that, but I can prioritize my freedom more, and that's how we learn, I guess, sometimes. But it's been a very meaningful time for me.
Absolutely. And there's something that you said about imposter syndrome, and I was with a client yesterday that I got a sort of a revelation, and it's something that I'm going to talk about, imposter syndrome.
Okay.
I think the word imposter syndrome was coined to help people to understand what is happening. But are you really an imposter, or is it yourself? But you are in a shadow of yourself because you are minimizing your capabilities.
Exactly.
It is easier for you to say it's an imposter because it is still you.
Exactly.
Who is performing whatever you are performing. So, but anyway, it's a topic on its own.
Yeah.
And maybe to just wrap up and summarize, because as I said, we are advocating for gap year as a career choice, or to help you to make a career choice. We realize that it's not linear, it's not A to Z.
No.
I wanted to be a medical doctor because I was a teacher's pet, but because I like being different, I thought, all right, I'll go for veterinary science. I don't like animals. I've got all sorts of skin issues because of animals. I am terrified of snakes. So I'm just imagining if I were to dissect a snake in my training, what will I do? But anyway, life as it has it, I am here.
It locates you well.
As I said, it will be a conversation for another day. But the takeaways for our listeners and our viewers, I think the first one is that is not linear, and that we are advocating because you can learn a lot about yourself.
Yes.
So for self-insight, for exposure and experience, and also to know, I can be on my feet for 3 hours or not if you are waiting.
Yes, it's like a trial and error phase.
Trial and error. I can work with people, or no, actually I hate working with people.
Exactly.
Maybe if you're computing something, you are a data capturer or a call center. You know, I
Yeah.
mean, one of my mentees said being at the call center actually made her to be highly anxious. Like it made
I
her
can
question herself
imagine.
so much.
Yeah.
And those are different ways in which now you can learn about yourself to know what spaces can I go to and what spaces I cannot go into. Things such as learning a learner's driver's license, a
Exactly.
different skill, a sport, ice skating, outrageous, maybe hiking.
You can build a boat as well.
You know.
Yeah, no,
Yeah,
definitely,
sure.
definitely. So yeah, I think my concluding remark is that, you know, life is not a time chase. You do have time. And even the gap year, I think sometimes we think of it as having to be after your matric. My gap year was after my first degree, you know.
Yes.
And it can also be if you have the freedom to also step out of work or take a sabbatical and have that. It can even be 6 months, you know, go for it. It's also good for your mental health. Yeah.
And I know it can be very anxiety provoking when you say to somebody, even when you are working, to take that gap year, because we know the landscape of most people, and it's not just a South African issue. You don't have savings, you have those debit orders,
of course.
And somebody who has been in a working life, they cannot envisage themselves without those things.
Oh, yes.
But to say, actually, life without those things is so much possible, where you can sell whatever you have.
Yeah, declutter.
And exactly, declutter and minimize. And travel. I think for me, I always say people are so obsessed with formal education and the quality thereof, and not obsessed enough about experiential learning.
Of course.
I think life, I was speaking to somebody where they were like, if you were in a community where the only choice you have is to put your child in a school that is substandard and so on, would you do that? And I say, of course, because I believe that education does not come from the school, but education is my responsibility. It's the conversations that I will have with my kids and the people around me. You know, when now I ask my kids, where is this place or where is that place? When they study geography, they've got a much more, they are more orientated than somebody who, you know, I remember how, and this, I know we are concluding, but how one teacher at one of the schools that my kids went to, I took them out of school for 3 days. And they looked at me with disgust as if I was committing the biggest crime, because they were about to write the test, I think the Monday. And we took them to a festival, by the way, in a neighboring country. And, you know, to them, taking them out of school was a crime, where for us, whenever we talk about this and this experience, they can draw from that, and they are so much, I would say, much more intelligent, even though they are not straight A students, but I think they are so much more intelligent.
Exactly. So that's you've said it, that, you know, it's the experiential learning that contributes to that, you know, and you also become more relevant to the world, because the world doesn't only need you to sit in on a desk and memorize information from the textbook, but you must be able to engage. What if you're going to have a Lebanese business partner and you don't even know a word in Arabic or what they eat, you know? So big ups for that.
So we're looking forward to many of these conversations. And
definitely.
As our viewers, if there is a particular topic that you want us to touch on and it's burning, let us know. We'll try to tackle that. Not try, actually, we will tackle it. We will tackle it. That's the confidence that we have. But also beyond this, in terms of career, coaching or career advice or career counseling, maybe tell our viewers a little bit more about the process that we as psychologists, or our function as psychologists.
So for that, I mean, you can come in for career assessment, where we take you through different activities that can help you navigate your interests, your personality, your abilities, so that you can make a career choice that's in line with those skills. And then also even just through guidance, through therapeutic conversation, and recommendations, you know, of possible things that you can pursue. So
Thank you so much.
Right here at Wellifehub.
Thank you so much, Sharon, for this time, and I know that you have benefited from this conversation and maybe even had as much fun as we did.
Yeah, I know it was.
Sure. All right.
Great.
See you next time.
See you next time.